Good afternoon, everybody. It is Wednesday, July 22nd, and this is Real Talk with Ryan. We are blessed and excited to have a very special guest, Larry Kesslin, with us. Larry is the CEO, president, manager, whatever you want to call it, of Spire, which is a community group that really focuses on developing a sense of purpose as in the community. But Larry, you're going to be much better at explaining it than I am. So I'm not even going to attempt to do that. Thank you for being here. If anyone has comments or questions along the way, feel free to use the chat box. You can use the questions and answers section of Zoom as well if you'd like. But just pop those in. I'll work those into questions. And then at the end, we'll shut the recording down and you can ask live questions. So thank you, everyone, for being on. Larry, thank you for being here. And with that, first question, Larry, tell us what Spire is.
What is Spire? Well, Spire was born in San Diego in 2012 as a company called Corporate Alliance. And I learned about Spire when I was actually traveling around the world. I put together a peer group that was meeting once a month while I was traveling, and I would Skype in from anywhere where I was in the world. And one meeting they were actually holding it at this place called Corporate Alliance. Miguel de Jesus was a member, and he's like, Larry, when you get back into San Diego, you need to come to this place. It's amazing, and it's right in the middle of UTC. And so when I got back, I ended up visiting, got back in August, and in October, I became a member. And the gentleman who was running the organization, Ed Quinlan, was doing a great job. And about 2.5 years later, Ed decided to take a job as the head of a nonprofit in town. And one of the partners said, Larry, do you think it could help us? This might be a good opportunity. So I talked to Troy Romero, who I see is on the call here, and I said, I think I could do something with this thing. And one thing led to another. I ended up taking over Corporate Alliance, which is a community for business leaders in San Diego, and it had been born out of a parent company in Utah, and it was a franchise. So I took over this franchise, and about 6 months later, I get a call from the owner in Utah saying, well, we've decided that we're no longer a franchising system, so now you're your own business. So now I'm an independent business in San Diego called Corporate Alliance. The corporation in Utah decides that they're no longer going to be called Corporate Alliance. So most of 2019 was thinking about rebranding and repositioning the organization. And at the end of the day, Corporate Alliance was all about relationship development, which is still what Spire is about. And I would say the biggest difference between the evolution from where we are from Corporate Alliance to Spire is that Spire is really about creating experiences that are all about deepening relationships that are interdependent. So people that want to do business together don't need to, but they benefit from helping each other. For purpose-driven leaders that are rooted in service. So if you think about that, experiences that deepen relationships that are interdependent, for purpose-driven leaders that are rooted in service, that's Spire backwards. So we're really looking at creating these experiences, whether they're face-to-face or virtual, to help people that are really, we just did a video, and the theme between everybody is when you come into a relationship, when you're just there to help somebody else, and the other person on the other side of the table is there for the same reason, that's when magic happens. And that wasn't always true, I believe, in the past here. There were people here that came in for their own reasons and wanted what they wanted. And right now, we've really created a culture, which was really the last 2 years of work, is how do you create a culture where people come in as business people and feel comfortable to talk about anything going on in their life, feel comfortable to talk about their personal and their business lives because they are integrated, and also to be vulnerable enough to say what's really going on. That I see so many groups. My background, I ran peer groups for 20 plus years. And I had coaching clients that were in my peer groups. And they would tell me one thing in the one-on-one coaching environment, and then they tell me a whole nother story in the engagement in the peer group. And I'm like, why are you showing up that way? And there's this veil that we put on, this armor that we put on, this ego that shows up that says, I need to be. And Spire is the exact opposite of that. You don't need to be anything other than who you are. And there's also this idea of these trusted advisors and CEOs. So we kind of segmented our business community into the provisors and the networking groups and the places where the service providers go, and the CEOs and where they go. So they go to Sage and Vistage and YPO, and they spend time with each other, but they never spend time together. And Spire, if your value set aligns with our value set, I'm really sure we care about the role you play in the company. So if you are a trusted advisor, or if you're the COO of a company and you can't get into the CEO group because that's not your title, but your values driven, I think that there are some COOs that are better at running their businesses than the CEO founder. And I've always said the greatest role in a company and the people that make the most amount of the difference are not the people that come up with the ideas, they're the ones that make it work. And they're not always the founder sitting in that peer group. And maybe there's other people in that organization that can shed a ton of light, but they don't get that opportunity at Spire. I'm more interested in your value set than anything. I mean, at the end of the day, you and I've had many conversations. And for me, at 56 years old, I'm done making money for the sake of making money.
Yep.
I've learned how to do that. I've had the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want to do it. And it didn't make me happy. And I've kind of turned my world upside down the last 5 years to say, okay, how do I integrate my business life with my personal life, with my financial wealth? And how do I weave those things together? And that's been my journey.
So let's take that, because I know elements of your journey, and there's stuff that's really interesting about how you got to here. And okay, as you identify that journey, and you talked about community and a purpose-driven life or purpose-driven organizations, and we're going to touch on that here in a little bit. But why does community and why does that purpose-driven idea of values matter to you? What happened in your life? How did you what did you learn in your experiences that brought you here?
So I'm getting chills right now. So most formidable part of my early career, degreed engineer, went to work for a couple of big tech companies, ended up at GE in the late 80s, early 90s when Jack Welch was CEO. And they actually gave me PTO. They paid leave to go spend a week with 85 inner city kids in Colorado. So I took 12 of them from New York City, got on an airplane, and there were kids from Denver and LA and Phoenix and New Orleans, and it was pretty fascinating. And I ended up going for a week, and we taught these kids to ski. And I got back on a Saturday. So I was there for 7 days. And the last night before I got back, I'm standing in this hallway. I can remember, like, to the moment what happened. I'm literally in this hallway. It's really cold. I could see my breath. I could smell the wood-burning fireplaces. I'm in Aspen, Colorado, this wealthy community that welcomes in these 85 inner city kids from all over the country. And it was just fascinating to me that there were these kids that have never met each other, and they were so connected to each other. They were so bonded as a community. And I was a 29-year-old degreed electrical engineer working for the #1 company in the world at the time. And I felt empty. I felt pretty, I don't know, I was a number. 300,000 employees. I was going through this really challenging time. And I got home from that trip on Saturday. On Monday, I went to work. I'd been promoted 6 months earlier. Now regional manager. I was interviewing at all these different divisions in GE. I was interviewing with GE Med Systems to go sell OBGYN equipment. And I talked to the woman who replaced me in my job. And I looked at what I was doing, and I just called my boss that Monday night, the guy who hired me, my mentor. And I was there about 4.5 years. And I said, I'm done. He's like, what do you mean you're done? I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. He's like, what are you going to do? And I said, I have no idea, but not this. Whoops. Sorry about that. My son trying to get in touch with me. So I told him I'm done. I'm finished. I can't do this. And he's like, I'm not doing anything. This is not for me. And he's like, okay. And I wanted him to come with me because he was a great guy, but he was so locked into 17,000 shares of, they had thrown him stock options and all this stuff. And he was just a great guy. He ended up, I was gone 20 years and I went to his retirement party after 39 years. And he had become this corporate machine and hated his career and it's just a machine. And I wanted to get out of the machine. So I literally got back on February 28th, quit on March 2nd. And my last day was April 15th.
Did you know,
93.
Everybody, has elements in their life that they look at, and you really had a quick pivot. When you went to that trip in Aspen, did you have something leading up to that that made you feel like, boy, this is going to change me? Or does it something that just hit you out of nowhere and you had to make an immediate turn?
It hit me out of nowhere. It's happened multiple times in my life. I have had moments where, and one thing to learn about me, I have a very, very, very high tolerance for risk. So risk is not an issue in our life. I've made a lot of huge decisions in the spur of the moment and just moved.
What, what has to happen, though, for you to feel this is the right step? Because a lot of us sit, and as we look at how do we make decisions, or how do we change, or how do I pivot that quickly, there's some criteria you're using that says this is it. What is it
I would business instincts, just smelling things. I can't put a. So I'm listening to the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer right now, and the world gives you signals on a regular basis, and you choose to accept them or ignore them. And I just accepted the fact of how I felt. And so from my entrepreneurial journey starts April 15th of 1993 to today, I've been on this slow journey of self-discovery, of learning who I am, what I am, why I am. And there have been major moments in my life. So the first trip to Aspen was the winter program. The second trip, I went back in the summer because they do it twice a year. I went through a ropes course. And the ropes course asked us to do this thing called the edge. And the edge is this process where they put a belt around your waist, they tie a rope to the belt. They don't tell you that the rope is actually tied to a tree, but that's true. And there's somebody holding the rope. And you go to the edge of this cliff and you put your feet at the edge of the cliff and you lean forward as far as you can, and then they'll pull you back. So I wore glasses at the time. I got LASIK done in 2000. So this is 1993. So I take my glasses off. This is Aspen, Colorado in the winter. And I go to the edge. I lean out. I feel like I'm going like this. I was probably like this. Like I probably leaned a little bit. And for the first time in my life, I was present. For the first time in my life, that voice in my head shut off. And all I saw was this mountain that was green with a snow at the top. And it looked like a golf hole with a sand trap. And I was so present in the moment. And from that moment in 1993 till today, I search for that moment every day. So my journey has been towards presence, being where I am when I'm there. And I was horrible at 29. Like to think that at 29 years old was the first time in my life I realized there was a voice in my head and that it could shut off. And then searching for that. And it's taken me another 26 years, 27 years to get there. And I'm not even there, but I'm learning more about that voice in your head and how to shut it off, because that's what stops us. That's
so one of the, no, that's a great. Really appreciate that insight. This is Real Talk with Ryan. We're here with Larry Kesslin from Spire. Again, Larry, thank you for being on. If anyone has questions, feel free to use the chat box. Text them in here. I'll work them into the questions, and at the end, we'll have time for live questions with the recording off. But so much about life, at least for me, has been sometimes learning what not to do, either by learning from other people's mistakes and hopefully avoiding some of those pitfalls, but also from making the mistakes. So as you're going through that process for you and you identify that being present matters and it really changes the way I function, how do you stay in that moment? How do you stay present, and how do you course correct? And you realize, because it's so easy to look at the surroundings and look at the noise and, oh, wow, I've got uncertainty. And obviously, if you focus on those pieces, it's impossible to stay in the present. So what are some of the things you've learned, and maybe some daily steps you take to stay in that moment?
So meditate every morning. Started with a group recently that I've been doing every morning at 6 a.m. I would say besides meditation, the big things about staying present and just making good decisions is surrounding myself with really smart people. I reach out, I mean, you know me well enough. I talk to a lot of people and I filter a lot of information, and I take the stuff I like. I listen to everybody. I try and make them feel like I heard what they had to say. And I would say mostly in the last few years, I've started to make my own decisions. I used to fly with the wind. Whatever somebody told me, I go that way, and then I did a lot of meandering for a long time. I'm learning more and more to analyze things myself, take input from others, and then make decisions and just move forward and know that you're never going to make the perfect decision. So I worked with, just to give you an example, I worked with Andrew Hewitt for a couple of years, about a little less than a year here in San Diego, who created the Game Changers 500. And he is brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But he can never launch Game Changers 500 as a business because he wanted it to be perfect before he launched it. And you know and I know that launching a business, good is better than great. And you just got to wait.
Perfect doesn't exist.
Perfect doesn't exist. You just got to go and self-correct. So I've always gone and self-corrected. And we've gone through periods of time with this business, and I've been in the community business for a long time. And everybody tells me, oh, the building's burning, all your clients hate you, blah, blah, blah. It's usually one or two squeaky people that are frustrated or whatever, and they're really loud. I've never had the building burning. I've never had real catastrophe coming. But when you see it as a 29-year-old, 30-year-old, when I first started, it was very challenging. 27 years later, it's a lot easier to make those decisions. A lot of wisdom comes with a lot of scars and mistakes. So I've had 2 partnerships gone. I've had the most sleepless nights in my life were when I was exiting businesses with people that I truly cared about. And 2 of them I don't talk to at all. And it's a shame because it's not about, part of it was how I handled it. Part of it was the situation. Business partnerships are hard, very hard. And I never wanted to do things by myself. And I always wanted partners. And sometimes after 19 years with my last partner, I said it was over. I didn't want to travel anymore. I didn't like the industry anymore. So there were a couple of moments. You asked me about the turning point out of corporate. There was a bigger turning point in my life in 2012. So 46 years in New York, moved to San Diego in 2010, probably other than marrying my wife and becoming a dad, probably the best decision I ever made in my life. I mean, this place, I've been here 10 years, and I feel like August 1st will be 10 years. And I feel like this was my gift to myself the last 10 years. I think I added 10 years to my life. So the last 10 years were like free. That was like free time. Because
well, you officially, Larry, didn't start until you got your San Diego area code phone number last week. So your calendar starts over. No, we're happy to have you in San Diego. I know you made an impact here. What was that decision process like to come to San Diego?
Oh my God. Where do I start? So I used to come here for conferences a lot. I had a client since 2002 here in San Diego. And then 2007 winter break, my sister-in-law lives in Del Mar. 2007, 2008 winter break, we came out for 2 weeks. And my sister-in-law said, we had 2 little kids. So my kids are born in 2000 and 2001. So 2007, what are they? 7 and 5 or 7 and 6. So she's like, you can't all stay at my house, because she had a daughter too. And so we decided to spend 3 nights at their house and then drive to San Francisco and back. And my wife flies home with the kids on New Year's Eve, and I stay for a client meeting the next day. And then I fly back. And I get home early January, and I'm moping around the apartment for like a week. And my wife looks at me and says, you never mope. What is wrong with you? And I said, I've been thinking about, I love Southern California. When I got out of college, I got a job, and they said, you can go wherever you want, start whenever you want. I wanted to go to California, I ended up in Pittsburgh. I have no idea how that happened, but it did. Another story for another day. But she said, what's wrong? And I said, I've always wanted to live in California, but do I buy an apartment there? It's a 6-hour flight. That's crazy. So this is January. June of that same year, we didn't even talk about it from then on. We were on a conversation. I said, honey, our life is perfect except for one thing. She's like, what's that? I said, honestly, it's not worth talking about. She says, what is it? I said, everything except for where we live. And I know you're not leaving New York because your mom's 20 minutes away. You promised her we'd never leave. And she said, try me, you might be surprised. I'm like, what are you talking about? You would leave New York? She said, well, honey, I'm 46 years old. My dad died when he was 46. Our kids are 6 and 8. And if we don't leave now, we'll never leave. And we were living in the city, in the Bronx, in Riverdale. We wanted to leave Riverdale anyway. So we were either going to go to Rockland County, or we were going to go to like Princeton, New Jersey, and get out of the city. She said, if we're going to get out of the city, maybe we should just leave. And I'm like, when? So I was like ready to go the next day. And she said, what do you want? And my line to her is I wanted a place I could drive a convertible 12 months a year. And I wanted a place the kids can go to public school because they were in private school and we were paying for private school. And she said, I said, what do you want? She says, I need family. So my parents were in Florida and her sister was in San Diego. So those were our two options. And it was a June day. It was June 6th. I remember certain dates. And we drove up to the mountains in the Catskills to go to a concert that night, that weekend. And it was like 90 degrees and 90% humidity. And my wife's like, we should look at Florida. So we started looking at prices of houses down there and all that stuff. And I said to her, we should go for a walk. She says, honey, it's too hot. I said, if you don't like this, you're going to hate Florida.
Yeah.
She's like, I guess you're right. She said, what about San Diego? I said, honey, if you're willing to have a conversation about moving to San Diego, I will leave tomorrow. Like, we could sell the apartment tomorrow. This is June of 2008. So we decide that weekend that we're going to do it, call her sister on Sunday just to ask questions. And turns out she was on speakerphone in her car with her daughter and her husband. And we started talking about us moving to San Diego, and they were coming here 6 weeks later. So cat's out of the bag. We got to start telling my mother-in-law, the kids. And we decided to move. We're going to give the kids another year in school. And the kids ended up in school another 2 years because the market crashed in the end of 2008 when we listed our apartment. And it took us 18 months to sell an apartment that should have sold in a week. So I lived through 2001 living in New York City. I lived through 2008, 2009 living in New York City. And then we finally got here August of 2010. And I have never looked back. I had a partner back in New York, and he would ask me all the time, Larry, will you please stop smiling through the phone? He said, I could hear the smile on your face. And I've had permagrin in this city for most of the time I've been here, because when you grow up and spend 46 winters in New York, I mean, I spent one winter in Florida when I was 7 years old. I loved that winter. And the fact that I don't have to see snow, my son wanted to ice skate and he wanted to ski. And I said, you got to find a different family. I didn't move to San Diego to go ice skating and skiing. So sorry.
Well, you can still do that pretty closely in San Diego too. It's always so impressive to hear how people make those life decisions and families involved. And when you're getting that buy-in, and that communication piece is terrifying and so critical. So thank you for sharing that story about how you guys were able to communicate your way through that. This is Real Talk with Ryan. I'm here with Larry Kesslin from Spire. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to work them in. You can chat them to me. I'll work them in. We'll have live questions at the end. Larry, you talked quite a bit about those pivot points and about that purpose-driven component, right? Where you're really reviewing things through that lens of, does this make a difference? How do you judge that criteria? How do you know if you're connected to the right people?
I don't know. I'll tell you in the next lifetime. You don't. You judge people on their values. I mean, I've had some experience in my life that have formed my judgments. And I ask a lot of questions. And the only thing that really shows is actions and what people do versus what they say. So you can only judge people on their actions. I had a hard time. So 2010, move here. 2011, meet a woman who's bringing computers to rural villages in Africa. Go to Africa in 2012 for a month. Come back from that trip spending a bunch of time in rural villages in northern Uganda, eastern Uganda, and in Kenya. And I just saw really happy people that had nothing. And I just was fascinated by these people that were so joyous, yet they were quote unquote poor. And 6 weeks later, I went to a conference for the first time called Opportunity Collaboration. So I was on this journey of, I was making a good living. And I tried to figure out, I was making a good living and trying to make a difference with the money I was making. And I was helping all these other people make money with their businesses, most of which who didn't care. And I got back from that trip, and 6 weeks later, I go to this conference about solving world poverty called Opportunity Collaboration. 400 people from around the world in Mexico for a week talking about this idea of solving world poverty. First three questions I'm asked: what is poverty? Who gets to define it? And why are we trying to fix it? And I was floored. Like, okay, I just got back from Africa 6 weeks ago, and I saw all these people that are quote unquote poor. And I started re-quantifying poor and impoverished. And in that moment, I realized that they were impoverished and where I live is poor. Because when I left Africa, I was fascinated by their depth of connection, their human connection to each other. And I did a TED Talk called The Disconnected Connected World at SDSU in 2014. And it took me 18 months to process what I'd actually seen there. And it's taken me another 6 years to totally transform my life, to live it every day. Because I went to that conference 3 years in a row. So year one, I go and it opens my mind to what it is to be poor and impoverished. Year two, I start to realize how impact investors and philanthropists and people in that ecosystem really try and make a difference. And a guy said to me, Larry, stop studying this and stop telling people what you're gonna do, just go do it. So we ended up sponsoring a young man from Uganda who's now living here, just got married, is about to have a kid, and he was making $1 to $2 a day, and we've invested, probably my wife and I, tens of thousands of dollars to help him become a commercial airline pilot. Now he's a licensed mechanic, FAA certified, and we've done so many things in our lives. I've been volunteering since I'm 19, 20 years old, and it's part of our life. And when I got back from that trip and I really started going on that journey, I would judge people on how much they gave back. And it got me in trouble because for some people, they don't need to have the gene that I have. Whatever gene I got, that's mine. And for some people, raising 2 kids or a kid or 3 kids or being a family person is enough. That's all they need to do to make a difference. My wife's that way. She doesn't need to go out and change the world. I do. And I stopped asking why. I'm just looking for other people that want to do the same thing because those are the people I have the most fun with. So when I got back from Africa, my life shifted. And then when I walked away from my business after 20 years and took 6 months and traveled around the world, which is a story probably worth sharing some pieces of, but I came back and redesigned my life because I walked away from my business and said, I need to find a different way to make a living because I'm not fulfilled and I'm making a lot of money and I'm not enjoying this. And I didn't want to go to work anymore. And I didn't want to spend time with my partner. And I didn't want to spend time with my clients because only 10% of them really, really cared. I had one client in Dallas who's amazing. This guy, Bob Burgess, 4th generation business owner, probably 70 now. And 10 years ago, started a project to build, he spent $2 million of his own money building a 8 apartment complex. And it's called Sophia's House, I think is what it's called now. And he takes in single moms and their kids and he puts them through junior college and makes them go to church every Sunday and puts them back on their feet. And he's taken his own money to do that. And he's just an amazing human being. And I just adore him. But he was 1 out of 10. So think about it. I go to this conference for a week, 3 years in a row. The last year I'm there, I'm spending 51 weeks a year making other people money and a week trying to change the world. I need to flip that.
Yeah.
I need to figure out how to use my time and energy to go change the world. And that's when my time actually started shifting, is I don't need to change the world, I need to change my world. And my world is San Diego. So when I got back from my trip around the world, I said, I'm done trying to change things outside of my little box. And I put a box in place, Pendleton to the 15 to the city to the water. That's my box. And I don't want to travel outside of that box. And I wanted to build a community for purpose-driven leaders was my reason for coming back. And the fascinating thing about it was when I came back and re-entered. I would say the biggest, most fascinating journey for me was when I came back and people said, what do you do? And it threw off so many flares for me. Because when I was traveling around the world, guess how many times I got asked what I did?
Never.
0. When I got back to San Diego, every person I talked to said, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I started changing my answer. So my answer now is when somebody says, what do you do? I said, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I'm an entrepreneur. And they're like, no, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I also play pickleball and I play tennis and I play volleyball on the beach and I bike. No. Do you want to know how I make a living? Why do you need to know how I make a living? What is it about that is so important to you? Do you want to know how much money I make? Do you want to know what kind of car I drive? Do you want to know whether I'm a good prospect for you? Do you want to know if I'm worthy of having a further conversation? Why do you want to know that answer? And most people don't want to know the answer. They just don't have a better question to ask.
Yeah, that's an interesting outlook. You used the phrase disconnected, connected world, and you said that as a title of your TED Talk. I'm hearing elements of this and how you're talking about the way people interacting. Well, expand on that a little bit. What does that mean to you? So that it's something we can take home and make more meaningful connections.
The more technologically connected we become, the less emotionally and spiritually connected we become. That was the premise of my TED Talk. So what I found in Africa was deep human connection. And I wrote a book called Success Redefined. And the foundation of that book, if you want to take something away, here's the takeaway for me of the last 8 to 9 years of my life. Searching for more meaning, searching. So when I got back from in 2015 and I landed in San Diego, I knew who I was, I knew what I was, and I knew why I was. That's my journey. I didn't know how I was going to monetize it, but I knew those 3 answers. And how I got to that was in Africa, I realized that people were driven by survival. And there's 2 concepts in the book that I work on. One is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if we reframed Maslow's hierarchy of needs a little bit, so the foundation of Maslow's hierarchy is food, water, shelter, and safety. Let's make that survival. The middle is self-esteem and love and belonging. Let's make that me. And the top is self-actualization. Let's call that your individual purpose. So let's put, those are the 3 buckets. What I saw in Africa were people that were truly in survival, and they were deeply connected to each other, because survival is not only our greatest human instinct as an animal on this planet. You would agree that our basic human instinct is to survive. I would say it's also our greatest human purpose. And if you could say our greatest human purpose is survival, then the foundation of Maslow's hierarchy is no longer food, water, and shelter. It's our instinctive purpose. And when you're in survival mode, you're deeply connected to everybody else in survival mode. Our society, where I was living at the time, where I've grown up, we're beyond survival. We're beyond material survival. We're living in me, which is self-understanding and love and belonging and self-esteem. And Maslow said that self-actualization is an aspirational need, but that was 80 years ago. He's dead. If he was alive today, I did some research and I talked to Maslow experts and said, is it possible that Maslow was really saying that the foundation is our instinctive purpose and the top is our own individual purpose? And the reason we need to find purpose today is to not be purposeful. The reason we need purpose is deeper human connection. So I created something called the connectedness continuum. And it has 5 levels of connection. The outer level is what I call surface level connection. Connected on Facebook, connected on LinkedIn, you're connected. What does that mean? The next level is what I call affinity-based or community-based connection. You have something in common with them. They might even work in your company. They go to your church or your temple, or they're fans of the same sports team. You have something more in common with them than the person that's surface level. Inside of that is a relationship with another human being. You and me, you and your wife, you and your daughter, me and my wife, my brother, my sister, my parents, one-to-one relationship. The 4th level of connection is connection to self. And in our culture, I don't think we do self very well. But the better you are connected to self, the better you are in relationship, and the better you are in community. But inside of self is our connection to our purpose, our reason for being, our spirit, whatever you want to call that. So my contention is we need to stop connecting at a surface level, which is what is making us unhappy, and start connecting at a purpose level, which is what brings us true joy. So it's not about purpose. So the Huffington Post and all these people are talking about purpose, and I'm in 2015, I'm screaming, it's not about purpose, it's about connection. So that's the big takeaway for me in the last decade.
Really like that. Larry, give us those 5 layers again one more time so that those that are watching and those who are going to watch later can capture that and understand that, because it's really interesting the way that's laid out. I think it resonates with so many.
So surface level is the outside layer. So if we're looking at I made a rainbow. So think of the outer color of the rainbow as surface level connection. The second layer of the rainbow is community or affinity. So people that are like you in some way, shape, or form. Inside of that is a one-to-one relationship. So another person. Inside of that is relation to self. And then inside of that is spirit or purpose. So think about it. Self. I do the same thing in business. Self, one-to-one, one-to-few, and one-to-many. Same thing with communications. Communications, I call the 4 C's. Communicate, 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 communicate. How do you communicate personally? How do you communicate to another person one-to-one? How do you do team building within leadership development, one to few? And then how do you broadcast information to the marketplace? It's the same model. So to me, that's been a theme in my life. Where does it all come from? You talk about, I was one of those kids that was white on rice. When I found somebody I wanted, I was a glommer. And I've had to learn to let go and let relationships evolve over time because I could smother people. So now I can actually deconstruct how relationships evolve and teach people what it is to build a relationship because I needed to deconstruct it myself. So we are taught the lessons that we need to teach others. So I'm running a community that teaches relationship development. I'm deconstructing it for myself. I think it's something I really enjoy teaching to others.
Nice.
That's why
You've given us a couple resources and comments. Where do we find the content? I mean, you've got a couple books, you've got your TED Talk. Is that something we can review or watch online? Is it something we find on Amazon? Where do we get it?
So the TED Talk's on YouTube. Success Redefined is the book about, to me, I'll give you my definition of success from 28 when I defined it to 49, 51, 50 was the ability to do what I want whenever I want to do it. And when I got to that point and I went to Africa for a month and I came back and I still felt empty, I knew that definition was broken. So I needed to redefine success, and my new definition is the ability to do what I want whenever I want to do it while being part of something greater than myself. So that's the book. The book before that, which is probably, I would say, the best book I've written so far, is called Breakpoints. It's a fable about an IT company that makes it, and the founder goes back to teach an entrepreneurship class what he learned. And he says, here's the 7 things I needed to learn. If I didn't learn these 7 things, I never would have gotten here. And those 7 breakpoints are charting your course. You need to figure out where you're going. Second one is building your pit crew. How do you collect and recruit the best people? The third one is communicating on purpose. You need to learn how to communicate effectively. The fourth one is partnership pain. 75% of my companies were more than one owner. And I saw more disconnects between owners than anything else. And that's where the breakdown was. They got through those 4. Maybe they could do what was called revving the engine, which is building a scalable, reproducible sales system. And once you do that, that's when the heavy lifting starts. And that's where RG Alliance fits perfectly for companies is once you build the engine and actually start generating real revenue, then you got to change the guard, which is the leadership team that got you from 10 to 50 employees is probably not the leadership team to get you to 50 to 150. And the last break point is what I called CEO time. I met more people that had the title CEO on their business cards, and I very rarely met a CEO. So CEO actually knows what they're doing, but there's a lot of people that don't know what they're doing that are CEOs. And I'm probably one of them. I'm not a CEO. My greatest strength is not running a business. My greatest strength is this, human connection, teaching people human connection. And I need to be around others that have that skill set. And that's where I can do my best work.
Wow, thank you, Larry, for that. That was we'll probably have live questions come up, or we're going to ask you to talk through that piece again a little bit with some detail. But really great insight. This is Real Talk with Ryan. We're here with our special guest, Larry Kesslin from Spire. Larry, thank you so much for being here. I have one last question, and then we're going to go to live questions. Very early, you talked about your purpose-driven leaders, right? You talked about why Spire is creating this purpose-driven community, and how you flipped everything upside down, and purpose is what matters the most. And that's where the top is, right? So you've really focused in on that piece. I would love, and I think our community who on now and will listen later, would love to hear your take on what characteristics or what attributes does a purpose-driven leader have in your eyes?
Someone who is showing up to be of service to others. They're selfless. They care more about what happens to the people around them than they care to themselves. And the best leaders understand that it's not about them. That when you make yourself, and I've had to learn this lesson personally the hard way, and I am far from perfect. And there's a lot of things you could ask my wife. So many, she would tell you very clearly, I am a flawed human. Very flawed human. Yet my intentions are pure. I wake up every day, every morning, trying to leave this planet better than I found it. And if somebody takes something that I said in the wrong way, and this has taken me years to get through, if somebody comes back to me and gets really angry at me, I know I didn't do anything, because there's never a moment in my life that I wake up trying to anger anybody. Zero. It's never been an intention in my life ever to make anybody angry. So if that happens, that's their responsibility. But you ask about purpose-driven. Purpose-driven are people that show up for others, that care about others, that are there to be of service, that do the right thing all the time, not only when people are watching, that are more interested in the community around them than they are just the deep-rooted understanding that this life is a gift. We're on this planet traveling billions of miles an hour through space, spinning, and gravity makes us believe that we're standing still. We're not standing still. We're insignificant. We're going to be here. I mean, this whole Corona thing for me is, I totally respect everything that's going on, but I'm going to die. I know I'm going to die. And this is not the thing that's going to kill me. And if it does, so be it. But we're here for a finite period of time, and we need to make the most of it, which is to leave this place better than we found it. So I'll leave you with this. When I first came back from my trip, I told people I was looking for self-aware, world-changing, get-shit-done dolphins. To me, that's purpose-driven leadership. People that know who they are, that want to leave this planet better than they found it, that are able to get stuff done. There's a lot of people with a lot of talk that don't do much. You got to take action. And I had this analogy of sharks, dolphins, and sharks that dress up as dolphins. There's a great book called Give and Take by Adam Grant. Givers, takers, and matchers. And if you look at Grant's book, the givers are the people that give with unconditional, nothing expected in return. The takers take, and the matchers give expecting something in return. And at the end of the day, I believe that he said in the book that the givers do the best and the givers do the worst. And the difference between the ones that do the best and the worst are the idea of boundaries. Those that give and give until they're empty are the ones that do the worst. And those that give and understand what giving really means and why you do it. So servant leaders don't totally give of themselves unconditionally till they're drained. They understand what the boundaries are and when it is time to stop. So with you and your business, knowing when it's time to shut off business and spend time with your daughter, that's a purpose-driven leader, because there's balance in life. So family is as important as business, as important as your spirituality, which is as important as your physical being. All of those things are important to someone who's purpose-driven.
Well, Larry, we thank you. We appreciate your perspective, your thoughts, and I think we all can resonate with the idea that as a goal, if we can wake up every day to leave the world a slightly better place than we found it, we'll all do collectively a great deal of good. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your contribution you make to your box in San Diego and sharing your thoughts and your ideas with us today. Larry, it was a pleasure to have you. The organization is Spire. Larry, thank you.
SpireSD.com is the website. We have a new one going up in the next week or two. So looking forward to meeting lots of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Larry.